One of the things that was mentioned about the reflective aspect of the course being challenging there in that quote. And I think one of the challenges overall for the students was to, I suppose, get into that zone and to get immersed in being a reflective practitioner at an early stage. The depth levels of reflective practitioner work in the cohorts did vary. And I think readiness might be part of that, experience of their own reflective practice in the past or lack of. And also the use of a framework versus use of no framework was something that came up regularly in the feedback. And again, this goes back to the debate about prescription, about formula, and looking at, well, how do we allow this self-study to be as authentic and meaningful as possible? So there were a couple of things there that, from a reflective practitioner perspective and from that module itself, that we found to be interesting, challenging, but informative for us moving forward. Okay, so just a couple of things here that I'm going to maybe highlight in terms of running a program like this, and in terms of the, I suppose, the conflict that we may sometimes have in terms of looking at such an innovative program and then the bureaucratic nature of doing it within a university space. And you can see there that there was tensions between the action research paradigm and the university demands, looking at rubrics, looking at assignments, credit weighting. All of those things, you know, can be challenging when you're trying to do something as creative and innovative as we are doing as a team. Okay, assessment was obviously going to be part and parcel of this program, but we want to ensure formative assessment and formative feedback was front-loaded, in the sense that when students and obviously teachers engaged in this program, that they were guided and supported from the outset from a formative assessment perspective. And therefore, we decided to look at mechanisms whereby formative assessment, critical friendship, collaboration, and feedback in the earlier stages of the program, that they were the dominating activities, so that teachers could go back into school, engage in self-study, and feel confident and feel informed about what they needed to do and how they needed to progress in their work. One student alluded to the dissertation journey as something that was quite refreshing, in the sense that they found that they had an awful lot more ownership and autonomy in engaging in their thesis development, because they had absolute choice over what they wanted to do. And sometimes when you're looking at a postgraduate program, and bearing in mind all of the, I suppose, constraints that do exist and the limitations that do exist, it is important to keep that in mind, that that is actually essential and a core component to drive someone to engage in self-study. It needs to be of a deep personal interest. Ethics was something that we're going to explore over the next while in the coming years in the area of action research. But I do think that it is something that we wanted to ensure was rigorous and was a practice that students engaged in from start to finish. And therefore, we decided to ensure that students completed and went through the process of ethical approval with the rigor and with the examination of the committee in the further department for oversight. Blended learning I mentioned before already. Again, mixed views, but basically just to say that the cohorts in general wanted to be together on site as much as possible when engaging in the work over the year. One of the main bases as well for ensuring that we wanted this program to be successful and to have growth is the extending the reach of the program. And what we decided to do was engaged in seminar series. We are obviously very strongly connected to NEARIMeet Group, Maureen, Katrina, Bernie, and Mary. And of course, we have connected to Cairn, and we have engaged in writing with graduates for the eJones Journal. Delighted to see Aisling Kennedy's publication there, and myself and a former student as well engaged in some writing on their work. The aim is to look at doctoral level progression and to look at program development in the area of self-study in the future in our department. So hopefully we'll get to that point. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Sorry, Heather, you were going to say.
It's absolutely fine. I was just really fascinated, and I wish that I had done this master's. That was my first thought. I wish I'd done this master's. It would have prepared me a lot better. But it was about the teachers interrogating their own values. And I guess it would be Bernadette, but you might know about how they actually went about doing that. Because that's something I've been doing with my with the trainee teachers, about interrogating their own values. And yeah, I would just be really interested in.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maureen. I have to say, I found it. This is Anthony here. Sorry, can you hear me, Maureen?
I can, yes, perfectly.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Sorry. You're never sure in these online spaces. I have to say, I found it like such an interesting, wonderful presentation. So much food for thought. I was thinking on so many different levels. And I suppose I thought the fact that she started with the values was so important, and really positioning them right at the center of the kind of process. I think it was just so instructive, and so I just found it really kind of inspiring decision. But I thought as well, the kind of conversation that she got into in terms of, I suppose, reflection and reflective practice, and the kind of the journey with that. And I think her own analysis just around, I suppose, the range, that different students, I suppose, as we'd expect, different kind of levels there. But just that aspect of readiness, I thought was so interesting in terms of how she spoke about that, but also the need for frameworks and those kinds of scaffolds to support the students. So I'd really be interested in kind of hearing a little bit more about those kinds of scaffolds. But I have to say, I thought it was great. And then finally, because I don't want to hog the conversation, but just to say that how she spoke about feedback, I thought was wonderful, and just how she's kind of planned that and set it out, and just the importance of the relational in the supervisory kind of space. So that's me done. Thank you, Maureen.
Oh, no,
great.
Fabulous. I wish she had heard every word you said, because I'm sure she'd be delighted. But we'll go back into the room in a few minutes anyway and see, if we can come together both virtually and in real life. Okay, that's great, Anthony. Anybody else any thoughts?
If I could say something, please, Wrynn, as well. I mean, again, echoing what Anthony's just said as well, it was really, really inspirational. And what is lovely is the fact that self-study has been accepted as a methodology, because all too often it's sort of passed over as you're doing autoethnography, or you're doing something different. The fact that self-study has been recognised, as you can do this, and it is, allowed and valid and things like that too. So it was lovely to hear that. So please, will you pass on my thanks for Bernadette as well?
I will, of course. I'm just wondering, I see somebody had their hand up there, and I'll come to you in a sec. Don't worry, Brendan. But I'm just wondering, Louise, is there a general acceptance of self-study, or is it still queried, do you think? Or is it kind of the poor cousin?
Yeah, I think it's still very much this poor cousin as well. I mean, I still get in my university, self-study, what's that? You're doing autoethnography, isn't it? It's like, no, it's different, and things like that as well. So it is very much a poor cousin. I don't know whether Heather gets that in her institution, but whenever I mention I'm doing self-study, it's like, really queer looks, or sort of like, that's not research, that type of approach. So definitely.
Yeah, I know. I think it was a poor cousin. I think it gained in stature say action research and practitioner research specifically, and self-study. And I think again, it's kind of under threat. So we're starting a SIG, a special interest group, along with the ESAI here in Ireland. But one of the things that we're going to be looking at is, to how we can ensure that that rigor and the strength of self-study and action research is maintained, and it doesn't become like a little exercise people do of an evening when they're watching Coronation Street or whatever.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. Not the watching Corrie, but the other bit.
Yeah. So we're going to be maybe talking about that later on a little bit. Okay, thanks a million for that. Brendan, did you have your hand up, Brendan? Did you want to say
I did indeed, Maureen. I just took it back down. I knew you had called me, so that's fine. Sorry, I have my camera's not working this morning. It's playing up on me. But yeah, no, I thought that was really, really good. And, I posted in the chat, I think, I always return to values. I think starting with values is for me, really, really powerful. And I think, I'm always I'm drawn back as well to kind of Whitehead's notion of the living contradictions, myself as a living contradiction, and how my values are lived out or not lived out. And, that's where I see the scope for action research in kind of closing that gap between what my values are and what my practice is. But I mean, I think it's so crucially important. So I would really like that question answered as well, from the previous question, in terms of how, I suppose, methodologies or approaches for unpacking our values at the start of an action research or at any point in an action research process.
how to unpack? Sorry, I left my notebook inside, so I'm tapping in my foot. Sorry,
I have a dog in the background now who's going to.
I know, and this crowd in the room, there's only a small number in it, and they're so rowdy and loud, it's beyond my comprehension. But anyway, I thought they'd chat away quietly, whereas in fact they're just very rowdy. But anyway, how to unpack the methodology. Was that what you said, Brendan?
Well, I suppose unpack our, how to, I mean, again, going back to the previous question, how do we interrogate our own values? Dog barking in the background, not helping, but yeah, I suppose how do we, I suppose it's that self-reflective process of discover. I mean, we have, I can quite easily name what my values are, you know what I mean? But how do I reach a point at which I can, unpack exactly what they mean and how they'll impact on an action research process or project?
I'm going to, oh, sorry.